Today, we're going to talk about something called the cognitive arbitrage shock. It's this idea that AI automation isn't just another bump in the road for the economy. It's something fundamentally different. And to really get why, we've got to look back before we can look forward.
All right, so let's break this down into two big ideas. On one side, you have labor arbitrage. Think of this as the outsourcing shock we've already lived through. It was all about moving factory jobs to cheaper places, and the result was it hollowed out very specific towns. But on the other side, you have cognitive arbitrage. This is the AI shock. And this isn't about moving jobs, it's about automating tasks, which could end up hollowing out entire layers of white-collar work, everywhere.
So that really gets us to the big question here, right? Is this AI shock just another version of what we've seen before? Is history just repeating itself? Well, to answer that, you have to really understand what happened during that last major economic disruption.
So let's do just that. Let's start with the shock from our recent past, the outsourcing era. Because the lessons we learned, or maybe didn't learn from that, are absolutely crucial for figuring out what might be just around the corner.
So this first big shock, it was all about labor arbitrage. Companies finding cheaper workers somewhere else. And boy, did it fundamentally reshape the economic and social landscape. The pattern it followed is, well, it's pretty telling.
You can almost see it as a chain reaction, like dominoes falling. First, the opportunities in global trade and offshoring just became too good to pass up. That led to this intense wave of import competition, but only in specific industries like furniture or textiles. And then the plants started to close, but not everywhere. It was incredibly concentrated in certain regions. In those places, the effects were just brutal. Local unemployment shot up, wages dropped, and those communities, they struggled to recover for years. The damage was deep, and it was really, really long-lasting.
And just to give you some perspective on this, for decades, U.S. manufacturing employment was incredibly stable. I mean, it hovered right around 18 million jobs. It was a bedrock of the economy.
But then everything changed after 2001. I mean, look at this. Coinciding with some major shifts in trade policy, that number just falls off a cliff. This wasn't some slow, gentle decline. It was a sudden, structural break that entire communities were just not ready for.
And this right here is the absolute key. The pain wasn't spread around evenly, not at all. Outsourcing was almost like a targeted missile that slammed into specific manufacturing regions, while other parts of the country, especially big cities built on services, were pretty much fine. That's the main takeaway to keep in your head.
Okay, so that's the outsourcing playbook. We've seen how that movie ends. Now, how does the coming AI shock compare? Let's break down the 6 big reasons why this new shock, the one driven by generative AI, is a completely different beast.
All right, reason number 1. The target is completely different. Outsourcing hit factory jobs. AI, on the other hand, is aimed squarely at office work. You know, the administrative, the analytical, the support roles that make up a massive chunk of our modern economy in pretty much every city and every suburb. We're talking finance, marketing, legal support, the list just goes on and on.
Okay, second point. And this one's a little sneaky, but it is huge. AI threatens to collapse the corporate training ladder. You know how a career used to work? You start as an intern, you become an analyst, you work your way up to manager. But AI is really, really good at those junior-level tasks. So if those entry-level jobs start to disappear, how does the next generation ever get the experience they need to become senior leaders? It creates what you could call a dangerous experience trap.
Reason number 3 is all about how this thing spreads. Think about it like this. The outsourcing shock was vertical. It went deep into very specific industries like textiles. But the AI shock, it's horizontal. It spreads out like a thin layer across almost every single industry that deals with information. So the focus isn't on some industries in some places anymore. It's on most offices in all firms.
And then there's reason 4, the sheer speed of it all. Moving a factory, rebuilding an entire supply chain, that takes years, sometimes even decades. But deploying a new AI system, that's just software, cloud computing, and changing up a workflow. That can happen in a matter of quarters. The pace of this disruption could be unbelievably faster.
All right, number 5. And this is a really fundamental shift in how we think about this. With outsourcing, the job didn't just vanish. It moved. It still existed, just in another country. But with AI, a lot of the time, the job doesn't move. It's automated out of existence. The work is simply gone, which makes that old promise of we'll bring the jobs back a whole lot harder to keep.
And finally, number 6.
This could absolutely crush the purchasing power of the middle class and do it way more broadly. See, when a factory town got hit by outsourcing, the rest of the country could, for the most part, keep spending. But if AI starts to push down wages and jobs for a huge slice of the white-collar middle class, well, that could weaken consumer demand across the entire economy.
So, I know what you're probably thinking right now. But hang on, the national unemployment numbers look fine. And you know what? That is exactly the danger here. This shock could be building up right now, just under the surface, completely hidden by those big national statistics.
Look, if we learned one thing from the last go-around, it's that those big national numbers can totally lie to you. During the outsourcing shock, the top-line economic data for the whole country looked okay for years, even while entire communities were being completely devastated. Healthy national numbers can absolutely mask severe, concentrated pain, and it could easily happen again.
The problem is, we almost always underreact to this stuff until the damage is obvious. You wait until you see the lagging indicators pop up, things like a sudden collapse in entry-level hiring, or a spike in people defaulting on their loans, or local governments realizing their tax revenues are drying up. But by the time those alarms are blaring, the structural damage has already been done.
So, where does that leave us? What does this actually mean for our communities, for our futures? Well, the impact is going to look very, very different this time around. The last shock hit the factory clusters. This one is aimed right at the office parks in the suburbs and the corporate towers in our cities.
This table really puts it all together, side by side. You can see the shift clearly. The target moves from factory clusters to entire office layers. The speed ramps up from decades to just quarters. The result isn't jobs moving, it's tasks getting automated. And the ultimate impact? It's not just hollowing out places anymore, it's hollowing out entire professional layers.
And that leaves us with one last really critical question. The last shock hollowed out towns, and we are still dealing with the consequences of that today. This next one? This one has the potential to hollow out entire professions. So the real question isn't if it's coming, it's whether we, our companies, our communities, and ourselves are truly prepared for it.